Who are you?
I'm someone who is deeply curious about living a meaningful, full life and living with a deep sense of passion and gratitude and presence. That's, I guess, on a high level. I can drill
Yeah.
into that a bit if you want with some personal info. But
Well, sure. No, we'll get into it, but I do want to ask, just in this current season of life that you're in right now, how would you describe a meaningful life?
I often now think about like meaning and success as having time and energy to do the things I want to do with the people I want to do them with. So spending time with my family, working on the projects I care about. So yeah, I feel like the greatest assets right now, the things like I'm trying to have more of, are more time and more energy.
Hmm. How do you audit that? How do you keep, because there's so much going on. We were just chatting before we hit record. Like we have I think a mutual passion and excitement along with many others around like what's possible right now kind of in the builder economy. And so I even find with myself, like it's easy to get pulled into be it, projects and offshoots and so forth. And then all of a sudden you find yourself like, shoot, like there's a lot going on here, and you can get kind of pulled off track around the thing that, as you just mentioned, is important to you. So how do you keep yourself, I guess, focused on,
Hmm.
what a meaningful life is for you and like actually execute on that?
That's the ultimate journey, I guess. But
Yeah.
there's a couple things I like to keep in mind. I like to be really present with whatever I'm doing. That's something I actively try and do. So if I'm working, I try and be really present with what I'm doing and really, come up, approach it with like a craftsman's intention. So if I'm building products, like I'm thinking about it as like a craft and like something I'm honing and something beautiful that I want to put out into the world. And when I'm with my kids, I want to be like fully present with them and in the moment and in the play. And I feel like if I can be present and approach it with that kind of craftsman's mindset, it changes things a bit, and it makes spending time on it not feel like a luxury. It makes spending time on it feel like a necessity. And I feel like
Ooh.
realizing that spending that kind of meaningful time is one of the greatest things you can do for your work, for your family, for everything. And so, yeah, there's almost like a flip that happens where it's when you spend more time on something and you feel more abundant with your time. Your time becomes more abundant because like you're doing the important, meaningful thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
love that. Well, and this, like, I mean, I'm biased, of course, given the work that I do, and I know the work that you do, but this is where, at least the vast majority of your work and what you've put a lot of energy into in the journaling space and reflection and Reflectly at first, which is when I remember first coming across your app back when we had a journaling app, and just like the power of this practice to literally train our minds to be present and be self-aware.
yeah.
Like I really do think, especially right now, it is the presence and heightened self-awareness is the ultimate superpower. And I think it leads to massive competitive advantage personally and professionally
Mhm.
in the world that we live in right now. Yet at the same time, there's still a big struggle, I think, in most, and myself included. It's not like I'm perfect in this. Like I struggle with it and get pulled off track. But I think in general, society has a hard time integrating these kind of practices in their everyday
Yeah.
life. How did reflection start though? Because it was still around
Yeah.
that time. Because I remember we had
Yeah.
Keo,
Yeah.
and I mean, of course, Holstee was around as well. But I remember you getting into like the prompts. I remember the simple UI and the design and
Oh,
so
yeah.
forth. And I just remember as a team, we were talking about like, gosh, this is not that like we were concerned about competition. Cause I mean, I think there's so like collaboration on that in that space was, and even to
Yeah.
this day, like we need more and more people talking about this. But I remember
Yeah.
thinking though, as a team, like, ooh, this is something that I would really use, and why
Yeah.
we created Q in the first place, because it felt like there
Yeah.
wasn't something that we would use. And then you guys came
Yeah.
along, and I mean, you outlived us, and I'm a glad, proud user of the app as we speak. So yeah, share the
Yeah.
backstory a little bit.
Yeah. So I started Holstee about 16 plus years ago, and it was very much
Okay.
focused in a similar space, creating products in a community that encourage people to live fully, creating physical products that help people flourish. And I wanted to do something digital. I do a lot of design work. I did a lot of design work for Holstee as well. And I kept thinking about like, what is the way to enter a digital space, especially within this world? And what I kept coming back to is that almost all the practices were an extension or built off of what I thought was the foundational journaling practice. So a lot of the Holstee practice around gratitude. It was like, okay, a gratitude journal is like really a great foundational place to start. A lot of them were around reflection and end of year reflection or end of month reflection. It was like, okay, a journal is a great place to start to like what you're going to be reflecting on. And so we thought, okay, we'll start with like that foundational element. We'll start with a journal. And so we started building a journal, and we started as like a small side project within Holstee, got some legs early on, and we decided to spin it out into its own company. And I started focusing on it about 5 years ago with an idea of really building not just a place to write and express yourself, but a place to truly reflect, to look back on what you've written and to learn from it. So that was like the
Yeah.
initial seed that Holstee was built upon. Holstee, and then subsequently Reflection was built upon.
Yeah. So why the name change, or what did that evolution look like?
Yeah, so Holstee still exists and thrives today. I'm just not working on it. They're focusing mostly on physical products and the community. And for me, I just felt really called to build this product, this journaling app. I've been journaling for 20 plus years. It's been such a integral part of my life, and I just found myself really motivated by the product, really engaged by the challenge, and really just finding so much joy in bringing it to life. And so it was
Yeah.
a very clear it was very clear for me that I wanted to work on it full time. And I'm the kind of person who really likes to focus my attention as much as possible. I have a tendency not to, but I have a great
Okay.
desire to. So I'm the kind of person who's very interested and very excited about a lot of things, but I also really value the importance of focusing, especially when you kind of feel the energy around it. And so I felt the energy
So
around
that's why you
reflection.
So that's why you felt that because I'm just trying to understand, like, obviously there was Holstee built up a community and so forth, and there's a lot of legacy there. I'm assuming
Yeah,
that, like, putting that focus and attention and saying, hey, let's create a whole other brand. And of course, there's a whole other product, but like a whole other brand,
yeah,
because that's not easy to do, of course. Like that's a big thing. Is that why? Like, just keeping the focus on the separate
yeah,
lanes, even though they cross over,
yeah,
of course.
yeah, exactly. And it's a good question. I think if I'm totally honest, I think I was feeling like I was providing less and less value to Holstee also. I felt like I kind of had
Okay.
given all that I knew how to give to Holstee in that sense. And we've got an amazing team, Kim and Carrie, and like they're doing wonderful work. And I don't think I'm providing much additional value. And I realized that early on. I thought, you know what, this is thriving on its own, and it's blossoming and unfolding in its own way. And I have like a new challenge that sits in front of me that I want to sink my teeth into.
Yeah. You mentioned that you've been journaling for a couple decades now. Do you remember how your journaling practice started and what it looked like?
That's a great question. Likely started in Microsoft Word. I have some very early memories of just writing in Microsoft Word.
Me too, man.
On
It's crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm fairly certain I was writing about things that were not going well and things that were I was uncomfortable with or uncertain about, or like really kind of yeah, some kind of like critical thinking about life. I was an early philosophical thinker, I think. And so I was really
Yeah.
like thinking about life and what's important, what's meaningful, and like how we value things and how we spend our time. I was thinking about those things at a quite a young age, and I was writing about those things. And that at the same time, that practice evolved quite a bit, and I would find myself journaling a lot when I was struggling with something. I was just like, I'm having a hard time with this. I have a hard time thinking through this, or where I go from here or what I do with it. And journaling was like always there for me as an outlet, and above all, like a true thinking partner. I feel like for me, writing was just a way of bringing my thoughts to the surface, and
Was there a
that I found to
mentor
be so
though?
valuable.
Yeah, like, how did you like,
No,
who
yeah,
or did you read about it? Like, I know for me, do I have it? Yeah.
yeah,
Like, this guy, Robin Sharma, was
okay,
was definitely, or probably around the same time that you started journaling. I think we're on a very similar path, and starting in Word. And then for me, it moved to
yeah,
Apple Notes at one point, and then eventually the apps. But Robin Sharma talks a lot about just reflection,
mm,
journaling, and I mean, he's journaling usually in like a black kind of moleskin
mm,
style. But it was
mm,
just through his work and his writing and his books that I'm like, oh, interesting. It seems to be like a pretty powerful practice. And then when you start
yeah,
reading about others that are
yeah,
inspiring and doing interesting things, you're like, they're all doing this in some capacity, and they're all
yeah,
asking really powerful, reflective questions. So for
yeah,
me, that's like kind of how it started. So I'm always
mm,
interested in how others
yeah.
have
I'm
come to the
certain that
practice.
something got planted in my subconscious at some point.
Sure.
I had like a tiny MP3 player back in high school, and for whatever reason, I, like, downloaded every self-help audiobook I could find, and I was just listening to
I
them all
love
the
it.
time. I was, like, had Stephen Covey in my ears and, like,
Yeah, yeah,
even, like, those old tapes from, like, Zig Ziglar. I don't know, I just whatever I found, like, kind of I was
yeah.
really into nonfiction back then, and I was just, like,
Wow.
listening to it kind of just, like, nonstop, and I'm sure something just got
For
implanted in
sure
my
it came
brain.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah, all
yeah,
of
yeah.
those are I mean, that's you're go like, that's before our time, really, with it's wild, like, that's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
Jim
yeah,
Collins
they were, like,
and all these
old. I when I Yeah, I remember
yeah.
listening to it back then, I was like, "Oh, these are, like, old recordings," like, you could hear the crackle.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, for sure. They would have started, like, kind of like Tony Robbins talks about this, like,
yeah,
you basically would buy, like, their tapes, and they would play them in,
yeah.
like, their cars and stuff like that. It's wild. That's cool. What Dave, like, what if you think of I mean, of course, you've been and there's probably many moments, but if there's one thing that stands out or a couple or handful of things that stand out that because of your journaling practice or any of your other mental fitness practices led to some really big unlocks in your life, do you have any
Mm,
examples that come to mind?
yeah, there is actually one specific thing. I think it was about 12 or so years ago. I was feeling a bit frustrated, a bit stuck, and I'm a very positive person. I think, I have my funks and like, I get into my like low moods as well, but I'm generally like a pretty positive, high energy person. But when I'm in a funk, it's like I really feel it. And the people who know me well, they can feel it too and they see it too. But there was a moment probably 12 years ago when I was in a bit of a funk and in a moment of clarity in that funk, which is rare because like when I'm in a funk, everything is cloudy and misty and kind of dark.
Yeah.
I was like, "You know what? I'm not happy with what is happening right now in my life." And so
Mm.
there was an old email service back then called like Follow Up Then. And you could send an email to Follow Up Then, like and it would come back to you. So I wrote like 6 months at Follow Up Then, you know, I'm not happy right now was the subject line. And then I wrote an email, I was like, these are things that happen in my life right now, and I'm not happy right now. And it was basically something I had like things I had already journaled about, but I wanted to be reminded of them. And at the end of the email, I said, if you're not happy about this 6 months from now, do something about it. And
Wow, that's powerful.
yeah, that was a big turning point for me actually, because I got that email 6 months later and it was eye opening. It was eye opening because first of all, the things that were really frustrating me at the time didn't matter. Like, the things that were, like, weighing me down, taking all my mental space, were not even on my radar 6 months later. There were other
Yeah.
things that were stressing me out and bothering me, but I realized, first of all, the things that often weigh us down so heavily in the moment today rarely matter 6 months from now. Of course, there are, like, things that can follow through, and, like, those are the threads that you really wanna kind of
Mhm.
follow, but it made me realize, like, I shouldn't get too weighed down by things that are very clearly temporary. And on the other hand, there were things that I was like, "Oh, I wanna make a change around this thing." And now I had the kind of data. I had, like, the pattern, the visible pattern to see it. And I continued on that back and forth email thread every 6 months for about 4 years. And every 6 months, I got that email, and I saw the thread of all the previous emails, and I would reply to it. And my replies would go something like, "All those things that were bothering me 6 months ago, not happening. But
Yeah.
here's what's present in my life for me right now. And 6 months from now, I wanna be doing this. Like,
Yeah.
you can do it. Like, future Dave, you got this." And
Yeah.
yeah, that was a very interesting kinda like twist on a journaling practice I found. And that just gave me so much perspective and gratitude. Honestly, I feel like it's so easy to lose track of the things that we have, to celebrate our wins, to be grateful for everything. And so, yeah, just kind of like that nudge where it was coming back to me. And that, in a way, that was like the seed for reflection. Because now in reflection, we really try and surface things that people have written in the past. And like a
Oh, yeah.
traditional journal doesn't do that. And so I wanted a way where it's like you don't just write it down and it gets lost forever. It comes back to you 1 week later, 1 month later, 1 year later. And so it's like you're constantly reminded of like, oh yeah, that thing that really sucked a year ago, I'm so grateful that's over. And that
Yeah.
thing I really wanted, well, now I have it. And it doesn't feel
Yeah.
as good as I thought it would, or it feels better than I thought it would, or whatever. But at least acknowledging that that thing I wanted so bad, I have it now. And
Yeah.
I think that's easy to lose track of.
Well, and it's so fascinating to me because, like, just the human condition, I guess you can call it. It's like, to your point, like when you're in the thick of something or in the moment, everything just feels so. it can feel heavy, or at time, of course, there's gratitude there as well. But then, like we're so quick to forget about all of that.
Yeah.
And when you get those,
Yeah.
I get those reminders as well from reflection. And there's usually a couple things that happen. One, exactly what you just described around like, oh, wow, like we really moved through that and it's not really a problem anymore. But also then a reminder of like, almost like a gratitude reminder of how far we've come, you know,
Yeah.
and what's
Yeah.
like what we're capable of. And I think like in the actual moment when I'm reading that, no matter if there's something going on or I'm struggling with something, I actually call this something, practice stacking. It's like, or
Mm.
experience stacking. Sorry. It's like you take, I use this for books. It's like at one point I never wrote a book, but before that it was,
Mm.
well, I'd never created like an app before. And somehow we got that out and reached a bunch of people. And then, the second book comes like, well, you wrote the first one and it went
Yeah.
to a lot of people. So, but it's like we forget that and you have all these seeds of
Yeah.
self-doubt and you stew and so forth. And you're like, okay, well, I can do
Yep.
this. Like I've done it before. And like,
Yeah.
I think that's where technology like this is really helpful because, I
Yeah.
think of Robin Sharma's, bookshelf of journals, like, sure, maybe he might just pull a journal off the shelf every now and then. And it's a beautiful practice to do that and see what you wrote. But just realistically, you're probably not going to do that as often as if you're using, something like what you guys built and it's bam, it's there. It's like three years ago. Like, here's what you were saying,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That ability to just like see how far you've come is so
Yeah.
underrated. Yeah.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about just like where we're at with journaling as a practice in today's world and kind of I guess where you see it going given all of the technology advances that we have and so forth. Like as a team, what kind of conversations and questions are you guys asking to like just equip us all with, a really good product, but then and to help as much as possible, but also cognizant of we have all of these, AI services and so forth. And I hear a lot of people saying like, yeah, ChatGPT is like my therapist and so forth. And, I've played with that as well and have opinions that I can share afterwards. But I'm wondering how you guys look at that being directly in the space and yeah, like how do you see that mix of technology right now and how people are journaling or reflecting?
Yeah. Yeah. So of course, there's a lot of ways we've added AI into our app in a way that I've seen it's changed how users experience journaling in a really profound and special way. And so I'm very excited about the future and where things are headed. And I say
Right.
that as someone who's also quite cautious and like aware of the benefits, but as well as like the dangers of AI. I think journaling as a use case in introspection and self-reflection, AI has a pretty special gift for it, I'd say, because we're working with large amounts of text and it's an external perspective. And even though, it's trained on data, so it has its own biases from that training data and all those things, I guess much in the same way that any human who you're talking with, therapist or coach, would also have biases. But it provides an external lens. And especially for the people who don't have access to coaches and therapists and other things, I am so grateful that there are tools out there that allow people to get an external perspective, to get another set of eyes. And actually, one of my favorite features in the app is like as you're typing, there's some like quick actions that pop up. And one of them is just a button that says get perspective. And so if you've
Yeah,
been writing
that
about
one's
something
really
that
good.
just happened, yeah, I can write about a conversation I had with a friend that kind of left me feeling unsettled. And then I can get perspective. And it's like, oh, wait, I could have just been viewing this all the wrong way. There's another way of viewing what just happened here. And I think it's just helpful to get another perspective, if nothing else. And so I really love the ability to be able to offer that to people. And
Yeah.
thinking like where things are headed, it's anybody's guess how quickly and how fast things are going to go. I do think a more integrated AI future is at this point quite inevitable. And, we talked about this earlier. We both use Claude quite a bit in our own workflows. And I use Claude quite a bit, like for personal tasks and administrative tasks and also work tasks. And I also see the value in how I might want to engage with my journal through Claude. And so preparing for like, what you'd call in the tech space, like an agentic future where agents are basically talking to agents, where your Claude agent might talk to your, let's say, reflection had an agent. So we're going to be building towards or preparing towards that future a bit. So we're building what's called an MCP. It's Model Context Protocol, but you can think of it as a way for Claude or or GPT or any of these other LLM tools where users might already be working to then access in a private, secure way their journal entries in a two-way conversation. So you could be talking to Claude about something and you want it to add that conversation as a new journal entry, you could do that. But if you also want to pull in some past journaling conversations into Claude to provide more context for what you're working on, that's also possible. So making it easier
that.
for tools to communicate with each other, to have more context and to kind of serve you better while always having a journal that is private, secure, has a beautiful UI. You can go back and see your entries, like they're not going anywhere. It's not getting lost in Claude's memory or in some context window or anything like that is really important. So that's something,
Yeah.
as someone who's quite nerdy and techy, that's something I'm quite excited about.
I think you nailed it with just like I think the word that comes to mind is like the cleanliness of your environment, your operate like your digital environment. And it's easy to kind of I guess the visual is like if I'm looking at like my desk right now, it's somewhat neat and kind of organized, but it's like I can physically see that. So if all of a sudden it gets full of clutter and a bunch of things, like just this is just me speaking like that actually, clogs up my mind as well. And I've got to like tidy that up. But it's harder to see in the digital environment that we're operating in. Like
Mm,
look at like let's just go right back almost to the beginning. Like look at something like just even our photos and videos on our phones,
mm,
right?
mm-hmm.
Like it's a mess when it for most people like they're duplicate. I mean, there's apps that try to solve that, but like the amount of
Yeah,
storage and we just collect and collect. And I think right now, a lot of us, myself included, like you throw so much into like Claude or ChatGPT or whatever you're using, and it's kind of all mixed together in a way that I
mm-hmm.
love the fact that for the most part, for me, my journaling is either if it's handwritten, it's on my iPad with a stylus, and the only reason is because you guys don't have that feature yet. So please,
Yeah,
if
it's
you
on
can
our
include
roadmap.
that, but then everything else, primarily, I'm voice journaling with
Yeah,
reflection, and everything's there, and I love the fact that it's kind of the journal is for the most part in one spot, but I can see what you're saying. Like, we've been talking about this mental fitness blueprint that I've been working on. And even the way that I use Claude as well, like how cool would it be? Let's say Claude, you're going through and you're working through a business use case or a new product or something like that. And then you can connect that to your journal in the sense of like, me for the last, whatever, 6 years or something, spot what's going to get in my way mentally
yes,
on this,
yeah,
with this business plan. Like you just rocked a perfect
yeah,
business plan based on the best knowledge that you've got out in the marketplace and so forth. And I think of
yeah,
the 90-day mental fitness blueprint that I'm working on, same thing. It's like, okay, this
yeah,
is what you're trying to focus on in the next 90 days.
yeah,
Here's where you're at as a snapshot in time for the season. But imagine the communication part with if you're bringing in the journal as well and be like, okay, well, just a couple of things that I've noticed as patterns that might come up worth
yeah.
addressing or just noting, kind of being proactive and getting ahead of that kind of stuff. I think that's brilliant.
That's what I love about the blueprint you're working on actually, is it ties in like a deeply personal reflective experience, like understanding yourself better. So then you can then really thrive on the projects you want to see come to life. So it's like, okay,
Yeah.
now we know how you operate, how you thrive. Here are some blind spots, and here's how you can like prevent them from getting in the way of what you want to make happen. Like kind of
Yeah.
connecting the
Yeah.
dots. I feel like, yeah, we need more of that, like in the workplace and like as a step beyond kind of like understanding yourself. It's like, okay, now I understand myself. How do I thrive? And like kind of execute on my purpose.
Yeah. But I mean, this is turning into a bit of a brainstorm. And I'll move on after this, but I see it because I keep getting prompted from, some of the vibe coding platforms as I'm building this thing that it's like, hey, do you want users to be able to interact with their blueprint? And I'm like, yeah,
Mm,
that's cool. I like that, but that's a whole other product, and
mm,
I don't feel motivated to create that. But if I could offer that and it's linked
mhm,
to a journaling platform like yours, for example,
mm,
and then you house those entries, then again, like everything is like you guys are the experts in that. I'm just trying to keep it real simple. Next 90 days, here's the plan. And then the next 90 days come, go through the intake,
yeah,
set up your blueprint
yeah,
again and kind of rinse and repeat and make the progress, right? But I think,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, like that's where, because then it doesn't become, you don't get into this like feature creep scenario where now for me, the blueprint, like the core objective or the focus or the offering is continuing to be diluted because of like, oh, it's going to do this, this, and this, right?
Yeah.
versus like collaborating and partnering with other tools to raise the value, but people stay within their areas of expertise. And I don't know, I think we all win in a capacity like that.
Yep. Yeah, yeah,
So
I'm excited about
anyway,
that future.
yeah, too. We'll take note of that and we can chat later
Yep.
down the road. What other
Yeah.
practices for you have been just instrumental in keeping your mind healthy and clear
Yeah.
and thriving?
It's actually a perfectly timed question. So I was thinking about something you just said like a couple minutes ago, how like, your desk is super clean and that helps you like think clear. And I had an aha moment very recently that cleaning is like an underrated mental fitness hack.
It's so true.
At least I realized that a couple weeks ago that I was just really feeling unsettled a bit, and it's because, like, there's a lot of, like, odds and ends in my house that, like, have just been nagging at me, and it's connected to another realization I had, which was knowing you wanna do something, knowing that something needs to be done and not doing it, for me, is a huge energy leak. It's like when
Oh,
I see
yeah.
something that needs to be done and I'm just like, "I know that needs to be done, yes, but I'm not doing it right now because I have to do X, Y, Z." It's like, if that happens day in and day out, my body just, like, starts, like I've, like, lose this phantom energy. Like, cleaning was one of those things. I just added to my calendar. I've got, like, an hour on Monday where it's like, just clean the thing do the thing that's been bothering you, and it's like it sounds silly because, like, okay, I've got 2 kids, like, my workday is limited, I have to be really focused on how I'm spending my time, and, spending an hour for some people that might sound like a lot. For some people that sounds like nothing. It depends on where you're at in your life. And it's been a huge unlock. Like my office is immaculate. It only took me 20 minutes. Like,
Yeah.
it makes a huge difference and it's affected my energy directly. And so, this is like a small thing, but like that's just one thing I added to, let's say, like my toolbox or my stack where it's like, okay, I know that I thrive in an environment that is clean and organized. My brain is like all over the place enough that coming into a clean space really makes me feel like I have a greater sense of clarity, and that helps a ton. But
Yeah,
beyond
I
that,
love that.
going to the yeah, yeah, I have a
Well,
couple
just
more, but
hold on, let's stay
we
on
can talk
that.
more about cleanliness if we want.
Yeah, yeah, let's just stay on that for a second because for me, what came up was, and maybe this is like a question pack in the app as well. It's like it's cleaning up your energy leaks, like doing a bit of an audit,
Mhm.
whether that's
Yeah,
physical environment, that could be relationships, that could be, self-judgments and so forth, like things just like playing in your mind on repeat, but just like giving ourselves a bit of time and space. Like you said, it doesn't have to be like, we're not talking about going on a 7-day silent retreat here. I mean, not that there's anything wrong
yeah,
with that, but like taking, 20, 30 minutes to just ask some good questions and give ourselves some data to
yeah,
clean up those leaks. And then it becomes exponential in terms of what that like gives us, right? But we need to
yes,
stop and
yeah,
pause and ask the question. I mean, that's step number one,
yeah.
right?
Yeah,
So
definitely. I
yeah,
feel like yeah, I mean, journaling is a great place for that, honestly. That's when I do, like,
yeah,
my morning kinda just, like, release, it's, like, the things that are on my mind, like, it's not a to-do list, it's not anything there's very little structure when I do my writing in the morning. It's usually, like, something like morning pages. I'm
yeah,
just writing things, and, like, that's a great place to identify some of those energy leaks. Like, what just
yeah.
the things that you're thinking about. You can close loops, bring them to the surface, let them go, or pursue them, but at least have some clarity on, like, what is actually happening inside.
So is that your consistent time for journaling, or do you kind of litter it in throughout your day, or do you have an evening flow? Like, what is it? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, journaling for me, it definitely changes with the seasons, but more or less it follows the following structure. I'll do some free writing in the morning, not every day, but most days, just whatever comes to mind. And usually there's always the same feeling of like I have nothing to write, then I just start writing, and then things come out.
Yeah,
I always when people say, like, "That's so daunting," I really just encourage people to start or try Julia Cameron's, An Artist's Way. It's, like, a
yeah,
great intro to morning pages, but this idea of when you sit there long enough, you'll get comfortable writing and things will come out that you don't expect, and,
yeah,
so I try and do a bit of that, and then as things happen that I wanna remember, like a really beautiful dinner or something my son did, I'll often add those as photos to my journal, and so I have, like, a lot of photos of just things that brought me joy, so that's, like, kind of my form of gratitude journaling. I don't do this every evening, but I have, like, a little checkout. I'm like a kinda evening wind down journal, it's actually one of, like, the guides in our app also, but it just asks 3 questions. It's, "What am I proud of today?
yeah,
How am I feeling in my body right now? And, like, what am I thinking about taking into tomorrow. So it's kind of just like a moment to celebrate, a moment to check in, and a moment to kind of prepare a bit. And
But hold on, like that, just having interviewed a lot of people in the space of even sleep. I mean, the last interview
hmm
that's live right now
hmm
is
I
with
listened to that. It
Dr.
was a great
Bruce.
interview, by the way.
Thank you. I mean, just I only bring that up because the like sleep is probably one of the things people struggle with most, and it affects so many,
Mm,
basically affects everything. Just
yeah.
going through that 3-part question journaling flow. I mean, there's
Mm,
science to support this, but it just intuitively also makes sense. Like to end your day in that kind of a reflective practice will help you fall asleep and have good sleep,
hmm
and like because you're just
hmm
cleaning out the mind and also stimulating a
mm,
bunch of awesome serotonin and dopamine when it comes to the gratitude and so forth. Like, but this is what
yeah.
I mean. Like, this is the stuff like that. Literally, I mean, encourage everyone to write, but you could literally even look at the questions and just
Yeah.
take a few minutes and think about them and go to sleep. Right? Like, that's the power of this
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. I had this, so before we jumped on the line, uh, like I said, I use the audio, the voice record the most. And
Yeah.
I dropped my son off at school, and I mean, the school's pretty close, so it's not like a long commute or anything like that. But just even driving back, like I fired up the voice note feature and just a bit of a share, like, sharing the kind
Yeah.
of what was on my mind and so forth. And then as soon as I got to the house and I hit done and it does the whole summary and all that kind of stuff. And I then left me with a question,
Yeah.
based on that entry. And I was like, oh, it's so good. And now that like that question's kind of on my mind, like based on what I wrote about him,
Mm,
that carries into the day. And I think like
yeah.
that's what, I don't know about you, but it was me too. Like I have, morning and evening kind of journaling rituals and so forth. But the greatest power has been the evolution of just sharing and documenting or asking questions, like using the power, the practice of reflection as needed throughout the day,
hmm
so that it's not like
hmm
2 p.m. rolls around and your mind gets hijacked. Like you don't have to sit in that mental
Yeah.
torture. Just take a few minutes and journal and like clear out some of that mental clutter, right? Like that's what's I
Yeah.
feel like really powerful with this practice.
Yes. Yeah. Clarity in the moment and like perspective over time are like the two
Yeah.
main benefits I get.
Well, then it just becomes integrated because that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about. This is all kind of fresh today. Speaking of Claude, I just set up this like morning brief essentially to
mm,
just kind of comb through like some of the topics within my world, like what's trending on LinkedIn and different news sites and so forth. And
mm,
it spit out this report from this month of 2026 from the World Economic Forum. And the title is this: EQ is 8 times more predictive of success than IQ. And what was the stat saying? So EQ is now identified as the top 5 critical leadership skill through 2027. CEOs in the top quartile for emotional intelligence generate 127% higher profit margins than the bottom quartile peers. Like, that's insane, man. Like, those
yeah.
are some real numbers. And the reason I wanted to bring
Yeah.
this up with you in relation to what we're talking about right now, even with that, like the numbers speak for themselves at this point. I don't know about you, but I see it in the work that I do. People have a hard time figuring out how to integrate these kind of practices. And I'm
Yeah.
just wondering, like, what do you see from your users working well or in conversation or given you're in this space? Because I think we just all win when people are more mentally fit and feel like their mind is
hmm
working for them instead of against them. There's no downside to that. Like everybody wins
Yeah.
personally and professionally.
So the question is like, how do people internalize kind of like some of these benefits of
Well, just
journaling a bit,
how do
or
you like, so we know, say you read that article, and that's not the only one. There's so many, pointing
yes.
to data showing that like when
Yeah.
your mind is working well, you're winning. But how do
Yeah.
we actually like how do we stay consistent or introduce a practice like
Mm,
this? Like I mentioned, for me, what I've
mm,
noticed been so
yeah.
helpful is
Yeah.
not just having a morning writing practice, which is super beneficial, but like as the day is going,
Yeah.
dropping in voice notes and so forth. So then it's just part of how I flow throughout the day, and you get the
Yeah.
benefits of the practice.
Yeah. 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 I always, I always feel like for everyone finding the time to journal or to do any of these kind of mental fitness practices, course depends on what your existing schedule is.
Yeah.
But I find that doing things before you start working, like first thing, is a great way to just like, okay, before I'm completely distracted by all the influx of content that's about to happen, is a great time
Yeah.
to journal. So for me, that's like before I look at my to-do list, like after I drop off my kids, I'm having a coffee, and before I look at my to-do list, I'm like, that's a perfect moment for me to start doing a bit of reflecting. But yeah, like you said, like throughout the day, I'll definitely come back to it when I feel the need, if like there's a pressing question or if I'm feeling unclear. And oftentimes the times that I have the most resistance towards reflecting is often the times I need it the most. When
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like I
Follow
mentioned, like
those
sometimes I'm
times.
in a funk. It's like, yeah, when I'm in a funk, it's just like I don't want to go to the gym. I don't want to journal. I don't want to eat healthy food. It's like
Yeah.
those are all the things I need to be doing in that moment. And so what I've noticed though is it often only just takes one thing to break that downward cycle. And so like it's so easy to spiral downwards. Like when you're not in a good mood and you're like, okay, I'm gonna eat this junk food. Okay, I'm not gonna go to the gym. Okay, I'm not gonna journal. Like you have all the energy leaks and all those different things. Sometimes for me in that moment, like I can do a tried and true. For me, it's like I
Yeah.
can go to the gym. I
Yeah.
can clean my room. I can go outside. It's like there are clear things that like when I do those things, I can begin to reroute the energy a bit. And journaling is one of those things. So it's like if I can get myself to just journal and get it out, it's like, okay, I'm stepping out. I'm like working my way up out of that funk a bit. And then when you're out of the funk, then it's like those things compound. When I journal, then I'm like, okay, cool. I'm like feeling clear. I'm clear now. So I know that like what I want to work on. And like I'm able to get my work done. It's like, okay, now I'm gonna go to the gym. Okay, now I'm gonna like you
Yeah,
just
totally.
everything's
It's the reverse. The
they all
reverse of
stack. Yeah, exactly. You can spiral up as quickly as you spiral down, at least in my experience. So yeah, I'm quite aware of like there's a this idea of like if I'm above the line or below the line, like if I'm where am I on that feeling, and when I'm above the line, it's so easy to kind of rise up high, and I'm trying to get really good at realizing when I'm below the line. Like I'm not my full self and I'm not thinking clearly, when I've got, little patience.
yeah.
So just really trying to sense into those things, and then grabbing something from my toolbox to kind of flip the switch when I can.
What about anything from the analytics with the app in terms of just like in general user behavior and so forth? Is there anything that you're seeing coming from either, I don't know, time of day or questions people are using, or, some of the guides? Like, is there
Ooh,
anything in there that is worth sharing that be like, oh, that's, as people listening, like maybe clearly this is working for hundreds of thousands of people. Maybe it'll work for me.
yeah, that's a good question. I can't think of a specific statistic around like time of day or day of the week that's really effective. One thing that we just released that I was recently looking at the numbers at is we added a new like one tap week in review, one tap month in review. Similar, we also added a
Yeah.
one tap year in review, which is basically like the Spotify Wrapped, but
I
for your
wrap
year. But
for
we
your
added that
life.
now
Yeah. It's good. I
exactly
use that.
for like your year in a row. But now we did it for every month and for every week. So if you've journaled like 2 times or 3 times during the week, you've unlocked your weekly review, and people are loving that. So it's a great way of like recapping your week at the end of the week, recapping your month at the end of the month. It identifies highlights, like things you can celebrate, things you're kind of stepping into, things you may have learned. And so that's really cool to see. That's something that I've been thinking about a lot, and I was like really excited to launch. And that's something that, yeah, users have been pretty stoked about.
That's a good one. I mean, and for anyone listening, like, I mean, of course, like highly, I'm biased, and so is Dave, given, you created this product, but I mean, jump in, try it out, because you're kind of handheld with these reviews and so forth, and tons of guides that to lead you through everything. But even if you're not doing that, like, blocking 20 minutes on a Friday afternoon at like 3 p.m. to do a weekly review,
Yeah,
similar to the questions that you just said, end of day, like what, for me, my three are, what did I learn this week? What would I have changed this week? And what can I celebrate
mm,
about this week? And just doing that
yeah,
consistently week by week, like
yeah,
it's like you have a PhD in like your
yeah,
life and business just by taking a bit of time
yeah,
to see, okay, like this
yeah,
worked, this didn't. And then you move into
yeah,
next week, as you mentioned, and like you're just making micro changes or adjustments based
yeah,
on the data you're getting back from yourself, essentially. And that
yeah.
compounds really fast.
I love the idea of doing that on a Friday too. I don't do that, but what I really appreciate about it is like you get some closure from the week, and then you can then
Yeah.
really take some time offline on the weekend and be present with your kids, feeling like you got something done, feeling you accomplished something, and like just
Yeah.
again, like we talked about at the beginning of the call, but just seeing how far you've come that week,
Yeah,
like that's something to celebrate. That's something to get some closure around and then step
for
into
sure.
some really quality family time. I love that.
Yeah, it just gives you a little bookend to the week, and the
Yeah.
time of day, at least for me, I've noticed makes a difference because I used to do it like it was the last thing I would do on a Friday. But then at least for me, what would happen is, like you're trying to wrap up the week from a task perspective, and then that thing gets kind of
Yeah.
punted because you're like, oh, I just want to get home, and finish my day. Ever since moving it to like 2, 3 p.m. kind of thing, or like whenever, like just not at the end of whenever you're finishing your day on a Friday,
Yeah.
I never move it. Like it never, I mean, I shouldn't say that. I move it like within an hour or so, but it never gets canceled, or I never don't go through that process because it's just been so valuable. So I guess just like, you know your schedule, so set yourself up for success, but just set that reoccurring meeting invite for
Yeah.
yourself and use your, tool of preference. So
Yeah.
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 Final question for you, brother. What's got you smiling and excited about just the future of the space that you're working in, and where we're heading?
First thing that came to mind when you said what gets you excited about the future, the first thing that came to mind of my kids. I'm just
Yeah.
like I get a lot of hope. They're kids, so they're wild now, but I get a lot of hope
Yeah.
for their future. I mean, they're wild. I love them. They're all the things, all the feelings
Yeah.
that like a 5.5-year-old and a 1-year-old might have.
Yeah.
But when I think about the
They're
future, I
crazy.
get
I
quite
get that.
excited. Yeah, yeah, things are crazy, but I'm excited for the future when they're a bit older, and also excited for like the future that they're going to be working towards and building. And I do think you talked about like EQ as being so important, and I get the sense that pretty much all your listeners are really tapped into the practices you're talking about, and they're trying to foster patience with themselves, foster
Yeah.
gratitude with themselves, like all these really important practices of really, regulating their own nervous system, being present in the moment, doing meaningful work. And I do think this is a pretty special moment for that. And there's enough people and enough parents and enough teachers and enough aunts and uncles and grandparents who are supporting this next generation from a place of well researched and like well internalized understanding of how important it is to support each other and be there for each other. And I know how all the crazy shit that's going on in the world, and
Yeah.
obviously there's a lot of bad things happening all over, but I do think that there is a growing movement of people who really genuinely care and who really genuinely are trying to better themselves and better the planet and better their community. And I think and I hope this next generation is feeling that, and they're learning from that, and they're internalizing a bit. And as a result, they're going to be entering the world with more compassion and more understanding. And that gives me a lot of hope.
I love that, and I still agree with what you're saying, and I think there's only so much we can control, but we can control the perspective that we flow through life with, and I would much rather flow through with the perspective that you're sharing right now, on around
Mm,
hope and one around support, and that we have access to these kind of tools, and that there is a tremendous amount of opportunity, and if you do that, then it surprise surprise, it finds its way towards you in some capacity,
mhm,
and it
mhm.
just feels better to live life like that. So
Yes. Yeah.
thank you. Thank you for Dave. Thank you for what you and the team do day in and day out. Thank you for being such a great friend and someone like we met so many years ago through this journaling app space. And here we are
Yeah.
kind of full circle, still in a way doing, work together and having conversations and trying to stick together to help as many people as possible. And I really value that friendship and
Oh,
any and all collaborations we've ever had.
yeah. Oh, you give me goosebumps. Honestly, this is like the greatest honor. I've been a long time listener, and it's like it's a joy to be here, joy to chat with you. I'm honored to call you a friend. It's like just nice to chat with someone like-minded, appreciates the same things, and has kind of like a similar understanding of the kind of good we can all do in the world, and how we can strive to be better humans, flourishing humans, and kind of yeah, it's an important conversation, and I'm glad that you've been a host to so many of it, and I've learned just so much from you over the years and through the guests you've had on the podcast. So yeah, it's a delight,
Oh,
honestly.
thank you. Thank you. Well, cheers to the continued journey ahead.